Solving proportional problems is the same as finding an equivalent fraction. We really just need a times and divide factor. Now, the times and divide factors don't always have to be whole numbers. With fractions, we try to keep them always as whole numbers. But in this case here, because this is a proportion, it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole number. So what we can also do is we can find one multiplier. To find one multiplier, we can just take this and divide 15 by 25. And 15 divided by 25 gives us a decimal of 0.6. So I can use that 0.6 multiplier and find that if I multiply 15 by that same decimal multiplier of times by 0.6, that will give me 9. Okay, so 9 over 15 is equivalent to 15 over 25. Now, there are other ways we can do this as well. We can just do this in steps as well. So I can do this. I can just say that 15 over 25. I can divide by 5, and that gives me 3 over 5. And then to get the equivalent fraction over 15, I know that I can times by 3, and do it in steps. And I can get my answer of 9 over 15 that way. In either case, we get 9 over 15. And we can see that if we actually follow the steps, divide 5 times 3 is the same as 3/5. 3/5 is the same as the decimal multiplier of 0.6 that I used in my first strategy. Okay, so there's lots of different ways we can do this. One way is, again, just to get a times factor and do it that way. We could do it much cleaner if we use whole number pieces like we did in the second step. But if it works out nicely, we can just use that multiplier. So in this case here, I'm going to just see if what kind of multiplier I get. So if I want to find the multiplier, I divide 33 by 22, and I end up with a multiplier of 1.5. Well, 1.5 multiplier is actually a fairly nice number. It's not a repeating decimal or anything like that. So I'm just going to take that 17 times it by 1.5, and I'm going to get 25.5. So using that multiplier times by 1.5, I get my answer of 25.5. Now, that's not a proper fraction, but since we're just working out the proportion, we're not going to worry about that decimal. For this one here, if I want to find my multiplier here, I do 16x divided by 2x. Well, the x's cancel out, and I just end up with a times by 8. So I can just use that times by 8. And so 16x over 40 is equivalent to 2x over 5. I've solved that proportion. Again, I just finding my multiplier, dividing to find my multiplier, and then using that multiplier to solve the proportion. So when we do these math problems, we can do a proportion to solve these math problems as well. So we know that we have a ratio of 10 centimeters on a map equals 28 kilometers of distance. So I'm going to write this as 10 centimeters of map can be compared as a proportion to 28 kilometers of real distance. And then I can set up an equivalent proportion to solve for how many centimeters apart if they are 53 kilometers apart. As long as I set the proportion as the map distance 10 to actual distance 28, my map distance is going to be in the numerator here. So lots of different ways I can do this. In this case here, I can find a multiplier going from top to bottom. So 28 divided by 10 is 2.8. That's not a bad multiplier, so I'm just going to use that and go in the other direction. So if I'm multiplying going down, I have to divide going up. So 53 divided by 2.8 is going to give me 18.9285. It's not a very nice number, but I'm going to round that to 18.9. And that's 18.9 centimeters of map distance is going to give me 53 kilometers of real distance. Now the unit rate, we can write this as a unit rate. That 2.8 actually is 2.8 kilometers, since we divided kilometers by centimeters, kilometers per every centimeter. That's the unit rate going from top to bottom. We also have an equivalent unit rate going in the other direction. So if I divide the other way, 10 divided by 28 gives me another unit rate. In this case, it's going to be 0. And I'm going to convert this to a decimal, 5357. It is a continuing decimal, but we're just going to round it. In this case, it's going to be centimeters of map distance for every kilometer of real distance. So this is how we can find unit rates. We just divide. Okay. The unit rates also happen to be the multipliers in our equivalent fractions. But specifically, they're the multipliers going up and down, not left and right. So a last method I'm going to show here is we can show this using a different strategy. And I'm going to do this in a different color. We can use a multiplying strategy where we start with 53 kilometers, and I can multiply by the ratio 10 centimeters to 28 kilometers. Now I need my answer to be in centimeters. So I need the kilometers to cancel out. So that means I put the 28 kilometers on the bottom, 10 centimeters on top. So times on top, divide on bottom. So 53 times 10 divided by 28. It gives me the same answer of 18.92. So I'm just going to again round that to 18.9.